Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you are, and welcome to this edition of me talking about George R. R. Martin and fandom and a whole bunch of other sexist stuff that you really must stick around and listen to this neckbeard whinge about. So George R. Martin did an interview with The Independent, and I'm just going to take the title of what he said here because the interview is pretty standard about talking about toxic fandom and all this kind of stuff. And he simply says, I don't understand how people could come to hate so much something that they once loved. And of course, he's talking about here Game of Thrones. Now, I never really watched Game of Thrones. I watched the first season of Game of Thrones or series. I'll be saying series for season because in the UK we say series, not season. At least we used to. Okay? So I watched the first series of Game of Thrones, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. However, life was too busy and fun at the time to kind of sit down and get into it and sit through the episodes. But I loved the kind of cultural phenomenon that was Game of Thrones. I loved hearing so many people at my work who you wouldn't think would be fans of Game of Thrones, of different ages, talking about Game of Thrones. And it was great to see. It was lovely. Of course, the last two seasons were apparently shit. Especially the last one, and it ended on a very sour note. People just did not like Series 8. And the fandom kind of turned on the once beloved Benioff and Weiss because they were kind of exposed as being a little bit hacky. Because when they didn't have the source material to go off of, they just kind of threw a bunch of shit to the wall and hoped to see what stuck. Which means they weren't invested in the product of the characters at all. Because if you derail something so much, that kind of means you didn't foresee or think to maybe pressure the author to kind of finish the books and get it out there. Okay, because he's been sitting on books 7 and 8, or however many books there are, for God knows how long, yet to release them. Okay, will he ever release them? He's getting on a bit in age as well, so let's see. But they got exposed. They did. It basically meant they took all the source material that they had, were able to piece it together brilliantly, but then when the rug was pulled from under them, they were like, oh. And then you got Series 7 and 8. And since then, you've kind of seen their career go like, They got involved with another franchise, which of course never came to nothing, because we'll talk about that other franchise and what a moron runs that franchise. So, when people turn on the fandom, who is to blame? Is it the fans or is it the creators? It is, of course, the executives that run the show, as well as the showrunners, the writers, and in this case, the author. Because let's face it, if he'd finished the books, none of this would have happened. They could have easily paused on Game of Thrones for a good 2-3 years, pressure Martin to finish the books, then come back to it. The fandom's not going anywhere. They're so invested in this, they'll happily wait. You underestimate how long people will wait for something to return to finish itself off, okay? A smaller example here is Stranger Things had a 3-year break. 3 years it was off our screens. It came back, exploded. Everyone's talking about it. It was phenomenal. Brilliant. Much love. Kate Bush shoots up the charts with that excellent song. And it's their best season yet. Because in an ironic way, they had time to sit there and marinate with it and do it. Although some of the characters they could have done a lot more with. But they came back like, pow! There, take this. There's a twist. Wow! And you're like, whoa! What? Whereas Game of Thrones just kind of limped over. So if they'd just waited a couple of years, come back, did it with the books to go off of, the fandom would have ended up in a Breaking Bad situation where everyone leaves satisfied and not an ounce of toxicity is ever encountered. What's interesting coming up is we do have, of course, a prequel coming up of Game of Thrones. So let's see what happens there. Whereas Breaking Bad also struck it lucky with its prequel with Better Call Saul, and it's done amazing. Again, I never really got into it because again at the time when it came out, I just didn't have the time to sit there and watch these shows. I did try Breaking Bad, but Boring. But, so, as we were saying, the responsibility always lies with the people that helm the projects, not the fans. The fans are always going to be shitty, but when the vast majority of people are just enjoying the product, the negativity gets drowned out. We've seen that every time. Okay? Other franchises to look at that have just completely shit the bed is Star Trek. And in fact, let's go with Star Trek at the moment. And since J.J. Abrams came in and brought his buddy Kurtzman in, and they've just completely crapped the bed. I did enjoy the first film, the kind of direction it went in. But after that, it was just like, it just keeps dumbing down and dumbing down. What is this crap? And then you watch Star Trek, you're trying to watch the series like Picard and all this, and you're just like, who writes this stuff? The other problem we also have is with the desolation of the American education system and the education system here in Britain, though our writing standards are a little bit higher, you get writers that lack any kind of nuance or anything. They're just like, bang, by the numbers, nothing deviant, nothing clever, nothing this, nothing that for the majority of the time. And you just look at it and just like, it's just like, who are you pandering to? Are you pandering to hillbillies or stupid people or kids? It's terrible. Star Trek is just abysmal these days. It's just, I can't stand the writing on it. And it brings me to another franchise with the fucking worst writing ever. It's so stiff. The dialogue's so stiff. How? How is it so bad? Star Wars, okay? George Lucas takes the brunt of the blame here as well, because the prequels were crap. A lot of plot holes. It was just one big toy advert, okay? That's what it was. So he doesn't get off from the criticism. Because I said the creators bear as much as the blame. And he left Star Wars, with fans with a sour taste in their mouth. Like, we weren't satisfied. So then Disney comes along. And we knew this was going to be God knows what. Though, for the most part, people thought, oh, okay, well, look, they've done well with Marvel. They might do well with Star Wars. No, because the demographic that they were targeting was stupid. And I've talked about this in previous videos, that you should not target children in a demographic. You can have offshoots and little shows and all of that, but your overall product should be growing up along with the people that grew up with the product. Because if they enjoy it and invested time in it, they'll pass it down to the kids. But if it's crap, they're not going to want to pass it down to their kids. It's that simple. And the way you pandered to kids now is not how you pandered to kids in my day. These days, everyone's so bloody mollycoddled and protected, and any ounce of violence is like, traumatized and pills and you can't handle it. Alright? So it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, because the violence and insanity you could do back in the day, you can't do that these days. Therefore, the product suffers. And Star Wars has suffered. It's absolute garbage. Kathleen Kennedy has no creative flair whatsoever. She does not give a shit about Star Wars. She might have cared about all the other good stuff, because she was solid in the 80s and 90s. She was solid, like a go-to producer that can get shit done, doesn't mess around. But that attitude doesn't transfer well to now, and she's exposed as apparently being a really, really huge bitch, and has fired countless writers and directors because she can't understand what these creators want, and if she can't understand them, that's it, you're fired, see you later. And the product has suffered, and so we've kind of had to stealthily bring it in, like Filoni and oh fuck, what's his name? Favreau. Okay, we've had to bring in Filoni and Favreau to kind of undercut Kennedy without firing her, which is wrong. They should have done that. But then Filoni and Favreau, nothing special either. Like Mandalorian is, you know, the ethos of Disney still bleeds into Star Wars, and so you can't really get that rough and ready enjoyment out of it. Though Rogue One was a goddamn miracle that happened. I don't know how that slipped through the cracks, but it did. And so when the executive producers, the people that game the system through nepotism, okay, mainly nepotism and jerking the right people off, or I don't mean that as a slight against Kennedy. I just mean, the ego circle jerk or that people do. I don't want to come across as sexist or anything, right? But when they do all this fucking stuff, or your friend like with J.J. Abrams, or Kurtzman and all of that, and all this kind of shit, you put the wrong people into the product with this kind of capitalism first mentality, and then you don't get an enjoyable story that's full of heart and you care for the characters. It's just get there, do this, so I can put it in a trailer, and it doesn't really mean anything overall because we want quick, bang, impactful trailers that we can put on social media because people don't have this attention span, which is complete rubbish, by the way. And so the fandom gets frustrated. And then when you have Star Trek, that's shit. Star Wars, that shit. Game of Thrones is shit. This TV show shit. That TV show shit. This film is shit. This franchise has gone to shit. And you liked all of these and then none of them are good? The frustration builds up and then you just explode. And this is where we get the toxicity. For the most part. The other part is, of course, you've got to deal with a bunch of racist, sexist idiots that are just never satisfied. And even though they might not be racist, they do have a racial bias. They just don't see it. You know who you are. Okay? So, there's all these elements. So, the key is always look at what worked, where the market is, and just go for that. Don't keep trying to pander to a woke crowd that doesn't exist. Or to children that don't watch the product or buy the fucking toys. It's the adults that buy the toys. I buy the fucking toys. Look, all this Marvel stuff. I'm the one that buys the toys, not the fucking kids. The kids are buried in their phones playing bloody Fortnite. Anyway, I've come across as a major neckbeard here, but all I'm saying to George R.R. Martin is, number one, finish your books so the fans are happy. Number two, all the responsibility lies with the executives and the creators. Okay? If they derail the product or they go in a direction that puts profits and marketing above good story and good characters that you love, then you're going to piss everyone off. And it's as simple as that.